In this episode, I will share with you from my adoptee story, and I will share with you some of the story of this adoptee life. My story, just as your story, is important in and of itself because it is my experience. And as such, it is valid. What is also important for me is not just my story itself, but the way that I tell it. When I am asked to introduce myself and share my adoption story, here's what I say. I was born in Colombia, probably sometime in 1984. When I was a baby, I lost my family. I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know how or why. I don't know anything about the first 2 years of my life. I don't know what day I was born or who gave me my name. I have documents that give me a story, but knowing what I know about adoption today, I don't trust them enough to recite them as my story. I can't verify any of it. When I was about a year and a half, I was brought to Sweden. And with that, I lost connection to my first country, to any first family, to my origin, my culture, my language, and my ancestry. And I was taken to a place where everything would have been foreign to me at the time as a baby. And I was placed to grow up the adopted daughter of a Swedish couple who had decided to adopt a baby girl from Colombia. I grew up in Sweden, and we were two adopted children in the family that I grew up, both from Colombia. Growing up, I didn't think much about being adopted, what that meant, why that had happened. I seemed like any other kid, playing, having fun with friends, not worrying about any of the bigger stuff. I remember being about 9 years old when I started having questions, when I started feeling like something was there and that it was somehow connected to my being adopted. But because I didn't feel like I had anybody I could talk to at the time, anybody who could hold space for me and provide the emotional safety that I would have needed, I didn't talk about it with anyone. I put the emotions, the questions, the thoughts aside and pushed it deep down. And with that came guilt, a guilt that I carried for many years in silence, as I know now has been the case for many of my fellow adoptees as well. Fast forward several years, I moved to the US. Later, I got married. My whole life, I would have told you, I'm fine. Being adopted, it's whatever. It's not bad. It's not good. I'm actually quite the success story of what an adoption can look like. This is what I would tell myself and others. And then the shift came when I had my own children and when I took them to the doctor and I couldn't provide medical history for them. And with that, my story also became part of their story. The fact that I didn't have access to my medical history, to my family history, now meant that I couldn't provide half of theirs. And at age 32, I started having anxiety and deciding to dig into finding out where that came from. I went backwards and I landed on adoption and thought maybe there's something here. Even though I've said my entire life I'm totally fine, something told me to go look there. And I went online, I went to Facebook, and I searched adopted from Colombia, thinking, who knows, maybe there's somebody else out there. And I found a group of 1,500 adopted people from Colombia. That was mind blowing to me at the time. 1,500 other people just like me. And I read their posts and I read what they shared from their experiences. And I realized it's not just me. There's nothing wrong with me. And this was the first time I heard about adoption with terminology like trauma. People talking about the loss of first mothers. People talking about the separation of mother and child and the effects of that on both. People sharing stories about falsified documents, adoption as an industry, a lot of things that I was not even willing to hear or able to take in. And then I started just doing my own research. And I started really listening. And I started digging into my own experience. And I went through a process called coming out of the fog. I define coming out of the fog the following way. It is the process by which adoptees who have considered themselves unaffected by adoption start looking to their past, their background, their origin, and as a result, start shifting their view on adoption, their own and in general, as well as the effects it may have had on their life. I will share more about the process of coming out of the fog and how that played into my life in upcoming episodes. But suffice it to say, it was a process of insights, of unpacking, of breaking down to the core. If you are a fellow adoptee, chances are you know what I'm talking about. And if you are not an adoptee, please stick around to learn about this. It is an important part to know about if you are connected to an adoptee. So in 2018, September, I started This Adoptee Life, having connected with fellow adoptees, having realized how many of us are out there, having shared some posts in these Facebook groups and gotten good response from people saying, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for letting me know I'm not alone. Thank you for putting words to feelings and experiences that I didn't know how to express. I decided, let me share from my story so that if there are fellow adoptees out there feeling alone, if they find me sharing, maybe they can feel validated, comforted, supported, and less alone in their experience. And so this adoptee life, going back to the beginning, is me sharing from my adoption story and then sharing in real time as I am coming out of the fog, as I am processing, as I am unpacking, as I am being hit with insights, as I am changing my way of telling my story, as I'm taking my power back by choosing new words, new angles to tell my story. And so I realized that as I was the person telling my story, I got to take ownership. And like I said, I felt empowered in that, and I felt the confidence grow in that. And so I decided I want to give the same opportunity to fellow adoptees out there. And so I started inviting fellow adoptees to share their story on my blog and to do it in their own words. I believe that there is so much power in language, and that as adoptees, one way that we can truly take our power back, one way that we can truly build confidence from within, is by exploring our story, owning our experience, and then speaking our truth. So I invite you to reach out to me if you ever want to share your story on my blog, which is a place and a way for you to do it in support and community with me and fellow adoptees. And also, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, I would love to hear from you. I have this dream of the number of adoptees putting our stories out there growing to the point that we can't be ignored, that we can't be told, oh, well, you're the exception. So This Adoptee Life started as a blog. It has grown over these 3 years to being a community. We're on social media, we're on the website, we're on YouTube, and now here in this podcast. I also started hosting both virtual and in-person meetups. And there is going to be information about that in the description or show notes. This Adoptee Life has given me the opportunity to connect with some amazing adoptees. It is a community for all adoptees, and also for non-adoptees who are truly willing and here to listen and learn. I focus on empowering you as a fellow adoptee. And I try to do that by modeling what it can look like to share your story, to own your story, and to build confidence. When I came in to the adoptee spaces, mostly online, a few years ago, there were a few adoptees who were already building, who were already working, creating organizations, doing some really important work for fellow adoptees, and feeling really embraced and supported by them. I have decided to invite some of them to be my first guests here on the podcast. So the next few episodes, I will sit down in conversation with some amazing adoptees who have done such important work, who we can all learn from. And if you are new to the adoptee spaces, new to This Adoptee Life, new to the online spaces that are adoptee centered, these are some people that I would like to just let you know they're out there. But instead of me just telling you, I invited them to come on the podcast and share with you from their stories, from their and from the work that they've been doing and still are. So with that, I've shared with you some of my story. I've shared with you how this adoptee life started and where we are today. And here's my message to you as a fellow adoptee. You are not alone. You have every right to own your story. Your experience is valid in and of itself, even though not everyone is going to be able to give you the validation that you know you deserve. I hope that by being here, you will be able to feel supported, comforted, loved, and accepted, no matter where you are in your journey as an adoptee. I thank you for being here, for listening in, and for spending this time with me. To all my fellow adoptees, P.S. Let's be in this together. I send you love, compassion, and appreciation always.